Sahaj Vidhi www.sahajvidhi.in Question 1. The doctrine of separation of powers in its classical structural form is not followed in any country. Critically evaluate this statement with reasons. Model answer. The statement that the doctrine of separation of powers in its classical structural form is not followed in any country is largely accurate. While the principle of separating governmental powers is fundamental to modern democratic governance, its strict, classical interpretation, as articulated by thinkers like Montesquieu, has proven impractical and undesirable in real-world political systems. Instead, most countries adopt a system of checks and balances, which is a more pragmatic and flexible application of the doctrine. Classical doctrine of separation of powers. Montesquieu's theory advocated for a rigid division of governmental functions into three distinct branches: 1. Legislature, to make laws; 2. Executive, to implement and enforce laws; 3. Judiciary, to interpret laws and administer justice. Crucially, the classical view demanded that each branch should be independent, composed of different personnel, and perform only its assigned functions, without any overlap or interference from the others. The goal was to prevent the concentration of power in one hand, thereby safeguarding liberty and preventing tyranny. Reasons for non-adherence to classical form: 1. Interdependence and overlap in practice. Parliamentary systems, e.g., India, UK. In these systems, the executive, the Council of Ministers, a cabinet, is drawn from and is collectively responsible to the legislature, parliament. Ministers are typically members of parliament. This represents a significant overlap of personnel and functions, directly contradicting the classical ideal of distinct branches. The executive initiates most legislation, and the legislature scrutinizes and passes it. Presidential systems, e.g., USA. While there is a clearer separation of personnel, the president and cabinet are not members of Congress, the branches are still interdependent. The president can veto legislation, Congress can override a veto, approve appointments, and impeach the president, and the judiciary can declare laws unconstitutional. 2. Necessity of checks and balances. A strict, absolute separation would lead to governmental paralysis and inefficiency. Modern governance is complex and requires cooperation and coordination among the branches. The concept of checks and balances emerged as a practical modification, where each branch is given some power to limit or oversee the others, ensuring accountability and preventing abuse of power without leading to gridlock. Examples of checks and balances: legislature over executive, impeachment, no confidence motions, budget control, legislative oversight, approval of treaties, appointments, USA. Executive over legislature, veto power, USA. Ordnance making power, India. Power to dissolve the lower house, UK. India. Judiciary over legislature. Executive judicial review, power to declare laws or executive actions unconstitutional, prominent in India and USA. Executive over judiciary, appointment of judges, though with legislative approval, pardoning power. Legislature over judiciary, impeachment of judges, power to amend the constitution, subject to basic structure in India. 3. Evolution of governance and welfare state. The role of the state has expanded significantly beyond merely maintaining law and order. Modern welfare states undertake extensive social and economic functions, requiring integrated policy making and implementation that often blurs the strict lines between legislative and executive domains. For judicial activism and interpretation, the judiciary, through its power of judicial review and interpretation, often plays a quasi-legislative role by gaps in laws or setting new precedents, further demonstrating the non-rigid nature of separation. Indian context. India, with its parliamentary system, clearly does not follow the classical separation of powers. There is a functional overlap between the executive and the legislature. However, the Indian constitution embodies the spirit of separation through a robust system of checks and balances. The judiciary is largely independent and exercises significant power of judicial review, including the basic structure doctrine, Kesavananda Bharati v. State of Kerala, 1973, which limits Parliament's power to amend the constitution. The executive is accountable to the legislature. The legislature can hold the executive accountable through various mechanisms. Conclusion: the statement is accurate. No country, in its practical constitutional arrangement, adheres to the classical, rigid separation of powers. The ideal of strict separation has given way to a more nuanced and dynamic system of checks and balances. This evolution is not a failure of the doctrine but rather an adaptation to the complexities of modern governance, ensuring that while powers are distinct, are also interdependent and mutually accountable, thereby preventing arbitrary rule and promoting constitutional democracy. 3.7 Filling they. Please visit our website www.sahajvidhi.in for more content.